The regular meeting of the East Bay Charter Township Board on Monday, November 13th, and we will call the meeting to order. If you'll join me with beginning with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, great. Ann, will you do a roll call?
Sure. Bartlett.
Yes.
Lyle.
Yeah.
M. Cortate.
Here.
S. Cortate.
Here.
Cook.
Here.
Walters.
Present.
And Friend.
Here. All right, with that, we will review the agenda for conflict. On our agenda tonight is the typical consent calendar, which has on it the Grand Traverse County ARPA funding agreement for the sewer project and an election storage clerk's office contract for the renovation that we've previously discussed in there. The business before the board, we have the Holiday Woods Special Assessment District, the fiscal year 2024 budget, East Bay Ambulance staffing adjustment, job description, assessing department and job descriptions, buildings and grounds truck purchase, and the cell tower proposal for a modified lease. So with that, does anyone have a conflict of interest? I do have a conflict of interest. I live in Holiday Woods Special Assessment District, so while I help with the paperwork and do the Excel spreadsheet on it, I don't have anything to do with the deliberation of it. So with that, is there a motion to accept my conflict?
I'll make a motion to accept the conflict of Beth Friend with regards to the Holiday Woods Road Special Assessment.
Okay, a motion by Walters and support by Bartlett. Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by no? Okay, great. Then I will step out of the room for that part of the discussion. Is there someone volunteering to take over for that part of the discussion, to chair the meeting?
Mindy, you've done a great job before. Would you mind continuing?
Sure.
Okay, we'll have Walters substitute as chair for agenda item 8A. And if there's no other conflicts, okay.
Vote on that?
We just did.
No.
To have Walters do the chairing?
Oh, yeah, I wasn't going to vote on that, I figured.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, yeah. Let's
Did you
see.
say that?
It's by consent.
Okay.
Oh, that's, I do the conflict by a vote, just so that everyone is in agreement that that is a conflict. So if anyone goes back to question it, then we know that that's the case. Because sometimes people will declare a conflict because they just don't want to vote, and it's not necessarily truly a conflict. And so, anyway.
You have to do it by being elected.
Right, exactly. So with that, we've reviewed the agenda. Is there a motion for approval of the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Support.
Okay, motion by Bartlett, support by Walters to approve the agenda as presented. Further discussion? Okay, well, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed by no. Okay, the motion passes for the approval of the agenda as presented. With that, we'll begin with public comment. And now is the time to make public comment to the board. I will save Ann from going through all the rules because there's very few people here. So I think we're okay time-wise and everything else. If there's anyone who would like to make public comment, please come on up and share your perspective with us. I will note that there's a public hearing scheduled for the Holiday Woods Special Assessment District. That will be heard during the agenda item. There is also a public hearing for the fiscal year 2024 budget. So comments regarding that will be during that agenda item. But any public comment other than that? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to correspondence and reports. Board has some correspondence. You'll see the Cherry Capital annual report that's in there. You'll also see the county ARPA funding agreement for the East Bay Ambulance Echo Unit. You'll recall that was about the $35,000 that we received to match our 35, I believe it was, rough numbers. And the board previously authorized me to sign the agreement. And then, so this is just showing you that agreement. because it changed a little bit the day of the meeting the last time, so. And the treasurer's September report is in there. So that's correspondence and reports. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. And would anybody like anything removed from the consent agenda? We have the board minutes of October 9th and the 24th. We have budget amendments 2023-17 through 20, and administrative amendments of 2023 1 and 2. We have the Grand Traverse ARPA funding agreement for the sewer project, and the election storage clerk's office contract that I mentioned earlier. Does anyone want anything removed from the consent calendar? Okay, does any member of the public want anything removed from the consent calendar? Okay, then we'll bring that back to the board. Is there a motion for the consent calendar as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there support?
Second.
Okay, there is a motion by Cook and support by Cortade to approve the consent calendar as presented. Any further discussion? We'll do a roll call vote.
Cook.
Yes.
M. Cortate.
Yes.
Walters.
Yes.
Bartlett.
Yes.
S. Cortate.
Yes.
Lyle.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. Okay, business before the Township Board. Did I neglect having you go through the entire consent calendar? I am so sorry about that. Okay, well, does everyone feel like they know what they voted on? You have all the documentation in front of you? Okay. And for members of the public, that is online, so you can see those items too. And in particular, you'll notice that the fiscal year 2024 budget, which we will be looking at under agenda item 8B, that was discussed solely at the October 24th meeting. That is for the minutes, and then the video is available online. All right, so with that, we will move to business before the Township Board. First on the agenda is the public hearing for the Holiday Woods Special Assessment District. I will let Mindy take over, and I will leave the room. And my only advice to you, Mindy, is remember to open and close the public hearing.
I'm writing that down right now.
And the reason it's here, obviously, is the greater than 10% difference. All right, thanks, guys.
So I'll just give a brief summary before we open the public hearing. Back in March, the Township Board set a special assessment district for Hollywood subdivision, and the East Bay Township contribution of that was set at 10%, with a not-to-exceed commitment of $24,000. Since then, the Grand Traverse County Road Commission has sent this project out for bid and received 2 bids that exceeded the maximum engineer's estimate by over 10%. The highest of those 2 was $428,431. So we're bringing it back to the board in a public hearing tonight to see if we would like to increase the township board's or the township's contribution to the project. Is there any questions or comments of the board before we do public comment? Okay, hearing none, I will open the public comment at
6:38.
Public hearing at 6:38.
6:38, public hearing. Anybody that like to come up and have a please come up to the lectern, state your name and address, and tell us your thoughts.
I represent the Holiday Woods Homeowners Association, and I guess I would agree with the support of the East Bay Township.
Can you give us your name and your address, please?
Patrick Buron, 3374 Autumn Leaf Drive.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bob Catoulis, 3675 Springleaf Drive. I support the road commission thing, but the one thing I'd like to know is, are these new numbers set in concrete, or is there a chance that they would go out again and rebid this thing and then come in higher?
Maybe Jim can answer that, because He's from the road.
Yes,
Can you
please.
come up to the microphone, Jim?
How about we wait until all the public comment, and then we'll answer the questions. We'll answer your question at the end.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. Bruce Moore, 3363 Summerleaf Drive. I also live within the Special Assessment District. I'm frustrated that this didn't go out to bid from the Road Commission until the fall. It's frustrating that the bids are much higher than expected. But we don't really have a choice. We really have to move forward with it because the road's not getting any better. And if it's allowed to continue to deteriorate, it will get to a point where it's a grind it up and replace, which is dramatically more expensive than what's being proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I will go ahead and close the public hearing at 6:41. Would you like to come up and talk about what it says here, that we will rebid the project next year?
Yeah, my name is Jim Schiffer. I'm with the Road Commission. And I've been asked by the supervisor if we would try to bundle it with other projects to see if there's any savings that would be available. But you'll probably note that the recommended amount there, the township chose to go with the higher of the two bids. Not necessarily that would be the one that would get awarded, but that's just to be careful in case you don't get a bid from the low bidder again.
Okay.
So, in other words, these numbers are not set in stone, but this is the highest
Correct.
at this point in time that we would
Yes. And if we chose to not rebid and just go out for execution, we could execute it for the lower of the two bids received.
So the road commission hasn't chosen a bid out of these two because you're looking to rebid?
Correct.
Clear as mud.
How does the cost fall in line with, obviously, there's some disparity between y'all's estimate and their numbers. How does it fall in line with other similar projects y'all have executed this summer?
It actually falls in pretty close. We also do Blue Star Highway and got very similar pricing to this. And I've talked to the contractors, and the reason why that these have been so high is because our initial estimate, we were using the average unit pricing for like county mainline roading. And a project like this will, their production rates will be way down. You can't have the low live bottom flow boy trailers. You'll have to use smaller trucks.
Okay.
So in the future, for subdivisions, we'll be using these elevated numbers, but we'll see where they come.
Do you anticipate numbers going down or up the next 6 months?
I think they'll stay pretty close. So I was told this time last year that they thought that they might come down a little bit this year, but that was not the case.
Okay.
So when you put it out for bid, will you send it out like early, like January, February, or are you going to wait till May?
No, we would do it January, February, and it would depend too on if we can find a couple of projects to go with it.
Right.
I do have one for Long Lake Township that's underway that we could bundle this with, and I may have one coming up for Garfield Township as well.
Do projects, though, that are logistically spread out like that, Eve, does that,
You're right on, because it'd be like, you would hope to save some in mobilization, but it's really three projects, so they
Yeah.
really have to be, I'm not sure that there's going to be a substantial savings.
do you know how long if y'all are interested in or we're interested, I guess, in the higher bid, how long that bid is good for?
I would have to check on that.
Okay.
But I know that the Molon bid, they stated expressly that they were planning on doing it in 2024.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Katulis, does that answer your questions?
Please excuse my ignorance. I have a hard time hearing sometimes, but I'd like to know succinctly, well, what was just said. Let me say what I think he said, that come January, February, he would go back out for another bid, and we would see what that bid is. Do we have to then approve that again, number one, or would that bid hold? And then what is the date that we're looking at starting the road?
Well, the date that they're going to start is going to depend on the contractors and the availability and the weather.
I understand that.
So we can't tell you that now. It's going to, especially if they're grouping it together, it's
It's
going
going
to
to be
be.
next year, though, right?
Oh, yes.
Hopefully.
The
in
plant
spring.
probably closes this week. November 15th is the normal date that the plants close.
Okay.
So it would not be this year, it would be next in 2024.
Oh, not till May.
Not till May, okay. What about the cost going out for the bid? Do we got to reapprove it, or?
So if what the proposal here tonight is that we are going to, if the township board approves, is going to go to up to 10% of the highest amount, hoping that we get something lower than that, and we don't have to come back here for that.
10% of the highest amount, which was,
$428,431. So $42,843.
Sue, is that the amount that you sent out to say we would be charged for?
Yes. Yeah, I followed the estimates that were provided with the treasurer and the supervisor and the clerk working together on those numbers.
Thanks, Sue.
And so if the next bids that we received are 10% above that highest mark, we would need to do another public hearing
Right.
and go through the process again.
Thank you very much for your patience with me. I appreciate the answers.
Thank you.
Board have any more discussion?
No, I just want to thank Tracy for the information today because it made my numbers work finally. Because the thing is with this number, all you have is the 429 and 73 plots, and when you divide that out, you don't get 56. Because there's all that process of, the interest and everything else that has to be figured in. And the interest I couldn't figure out, and Tracy supplied it, and I appreciate
Okay. Is this the 29, or did we have some already? We had some already, didn't we?
No, I do not believe there were any on the consent calendar, so 2023-29 is the next resolution number.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution confirming the revised special assessment roll for East Bay Charter Township Holiday Woods Road Special Assessment District. Resolution 2023-29, and establish a 10% not to exceed commitment of whatever that would be.
For the 42,843.10?
Yes.
Support.
I have a motion from Matt Cortade to approve Resolution 2023-29 for a lump, 10% not to exceed of $42,843.10 with support by Matt Cook. This is a resolution, so we need a roll call, is that correct?
Yes.
Can you
M-
take roll?
Sure. M. Cortate,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
S. Cortate,
Yes.
Lyle,
Yes,
Walters.
Yes,
we need to go find,
we need to go find Beth.
Okay, we'll proceed to the public hearing for the fiscal year 2024 budget.
Thank you.
that begins on page, I don't have the page number on
I don't
here,
have page numbers on
but
it.
you will have it on,
73.
it's about a third of the way through. How's that?
Sounds good.
It's got a header on the page. So with this, we have several items. We have the General Appropriations Act. We have the resolution of officer salaries. And then we have resolutions regarding the annual review or establishment of wages and fees. The General Appropriations Act, we did review that at the October 24th meeting. And the only changes to that, to my knowledge, and you received this in an email, where some of the department numbers changed from the chart of accounts that I had forgotten that they weren't the same last year, so they were adjusted. But you're familiar with those. And then today you did receive an email with respect to the wages, where I had inadvertently left off the office manager. I had taken out the planning and zoning office specialist, and when I did that, I forgot to put in the office manager. So that packet, that is included in your packet now and is correct. It does have the office manager position in there on that. Let's see. We have a resolution for each township officer, supervisor, clerk, treasurer, and trustee. Then we have a resolution for those wages, and then a resolution for the permits and application fees and licenses. And we can go through questions as we go through these resolutions if you like. So with that, is there any questions on the resolution approving the fiscal year 2024 General Appropriations Act? That would be Resolution 30. And that begins on the page right after the cover page. It goes through the, you'll remember, it goes through the 14 different sections of the act and combines them to departments within the general and special revenue funds. With that, sorry. I do want to open the public hearing, I forgot, so I'll go ahead with your comment.
I have a question about how this, and maybe I should have said something earlier, but how the cell tower is going to change the revenues and.
So the cell tower is the water fund, and that's an enterprise fund, so that's not hitting the General Appropriations Act. Yeah. So with that, if you're good, then I'm going to open up the public hearing. So it is,
53.
and we'll open the public hearing on the fiscal year 2024 General Appropriations Act. Is there anybody who would like to make a comment on that? I know it's exciting stuff, you guys. Okay, with that, we will close public comment and then bring it back to questions. As I mentioned, we'll look at first approving that resolution 2023-30 that goes through the different sections and has the general fund revenues at $2,418,975. Has the special revenue funds at $3,531,028. The general fund expenditures are $2,802,540. And the special revenue expenditures are $3,546,020. And if you're doing the subtraction and addition there, you will see that there's planned use of fund balance in those budgets.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-30, the resolution approving the fiscal year 2024 General Appropriations Act.
Okay, there is a motion by Walters and support by Lyle to approve the resolution 2023-30. Can we do a roll call vote, Ann?
Walters.
Yes.
Lyle.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Bartlett.
Yes.
S. Cortade.
Yes.
M. Cortade.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next series of resolutions. The next actually four, have to do with the officers' salaries. These have been adjusted by 3.2%, which is the COLA for fiscal year 2024, as set through the Social Security Administration, and this is consistent with staff's adjustment as well, that you'll see in the later wage resolution of 3.2%. Let's see. So the motion for the supervisor's salary, hold on, let's see,
31.
would be, okay, Resolution 2023-31 with a salary of $75,536. Is there a motion?
I'll make that.
That motion.
Okay, motion is made by Cortate. Is there support?
Support.
Okay, lots of motions and lots of support. Motion by S. Cortate and support by Bartlett. Further discussion. Ann, we'll do a roll call vote.
Escortate,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Walters.
Yes.
M. Cortate.
Yes.
Lyle,
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. Okay, similarly, we're looking at Resolution 2023-32. This is for the office, for the salary for the clerk, and that is set at $71,630. Is there a motion? And I should note, as you guys all know, that these numbers are embedded in the resolution within the General Appropriations Act that we just approved.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-32.
Okay, is there support?
Support.
Motion by Walters, support by Bartlett to approve Resolution 2023-32 for the clerk's officer's salary. And we'll do a roll call vote.
Walters.
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Escortate.
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
M. Cortate.
Yes.
Lyle,
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. We are under Resolution 2023-32, officer's salary for the treasurer is
33.
33. Thank you very much. That will be set at $71,630. Is there a motion for that?
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-33.
Support.
Motion by Walters and support by M. Cortate for the Resolution 2023-33 for the treasurer's officer's salary. Ann, will you do a roll call vote, please?
Walters.
Yes.
M. Cortate.
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Lyle,
Yes.
Escortate.
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. Okay, we're on to the last of the officers' salaries. This is the 2023-34. This is the trustee officer's salary that is set for the next fiscal year at $8,221. Is there a motion for this resolution?
So moved.
Is there support?
Support.
Motion by Lyle, support by Walters for Resolution 2023-34 for the trustee officer's salary. Ann, will you do a roll call vote?
Lyle,
Yes.
Walters.
Yes.
Cook,
Yes.
Escortate.
Yes.
M. Cortate.
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Friend.
Yes. Okay, we will move on to the resolution establishing the fiscal year 2024 wages, and you'll see this table is updated. And again, we had some department numbers switching on that, and then adding in that office manager since the packet first went out. But your printed packet right now has all of the information in here. And this year, you will see there are no other adjustments. We do have a column for the COLA adjustment, and then we have another column that is an adjustment for anything else that might affect that position, such as industry, wage trends, work performance, all of those other things. But at this point, this year, these are 3.2% just for the COLA and no other adjustment. Again, this resolution does state that this does not negate any department head or officer coming to this board to potentially change a wage during the next fiscal year. It's just a document that we have looked at it on an annual basis, and anything that we do change, we'll do as an amendment to this resolution. So any questions on this resolution, and what would it be numbered,
This
35?
one will be 35.
Okay.
On the page that says page 4 of 4, the special revenue funds for the part-time paramedic under 210.
Yes.
The starting wage in the revised with the COLA wage is the same amount.
Yeah,
So
so,
wouldn't that be 2184 to 3.2?
no, actually, Nick and I had talked about this, and we were looking at what some other agencies are doing, and they've adjusted their wages too, but what they're really doing is leaving that starting wage lower, and it just gives them a little bit more flexibility. And so we decided to go ahead and do that, particularly if he hires somebody in one of those categories that doesn't have a lot of significant experience. It doesn't make him push them higher, so he can have some more flexibility. And remember, when we hire somebody, that rate does come to you at that time, so we can make sure it's appropriate for them.
Okay. Oh, I saw that the ending, the high side.
Right,
was
yeah.
heavy increase.
Looks like a typo, for sure.
And that's why I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure we were looking at it.
Yep.
From the same eyes.
Yep,
Okay.
I appreciate that.
The only question I have is on the medical director. It says transitioning to exempt. But you have a figure of 89.5 in here. And is that negotiable?
So it could be. I mean, obviously, that is setting it different than what it was. The way that I came to that 89.5 is sat down and talked with Nick about that, and we looked at the survey that the clerk sends out to other organizations. They're all townships and city, and I don't know if villages are in there. Okay. And so we look at that, plus we have some industry data from like knowing some of the other collaborative partners. So for example, we knew I'm trying to remember the names of the organization. Was it Kalkaska? And there were like 2 other townships where we knew what their medical directors were making. So we looked at that. We also looked at, one thing I didn't want to do with Nick, because he had, his wages were previously made up really of a hybrid of his standard wage, all paramedics, right? They work 48 hours in a week. So they have a guaranteed 8 hours of overtime every week. So 96 for every 2 weeks. He's no different, except he does pull in more hours than that. And particularly before we had another full-time person. So we looked at his previous years, his total wages, what would have appeared on his W-2. Because the one thing I didn't want him to do was go backwards. And so we looked at something that would not be less than what he had made previously, but was right in line with what we had seen across the industry. And so that was where we came up with the 89.5. So that's the source of the information.
Yeah. Well, the only question I have is we're going to discuss this next as far as transitioning, and we'll have that discussion. But as far as this act goes, it establishes our wages, and part of that discussion of whether we transition the job or not would be what his wage would be.
Sure.
So I just want to make sure that this is not necessarily set and cast in stone if we approve it.
Well, I think this would be the time for us to talk about that. I believe that it would be. So it's appropriate, that question. This is one of the only wages in this chart this year that would be like that. So for example, some of your other wages are either, well, a lot of them are the officers, and we just set those already. But some of your other ones, like in planning and zoning, those are set just as a standard from the 3.2% COLA adjustment. This is the only one that really doesn't factor that in. For example, buildings and grounds was a little bit different, but we dealt with that in the middle of the year when we hired Dan. So this, again, would be the appropriate time to discuss that.
Well, I hear your argument, but I also understand that the statement in the discussion is that it would help reduce overtime, but technically we're, in my opinion, codifying that overtime in his wages. Because if he's going to be a 40-hour-a-week employee, which I know he'll work more, but that's the way salaried works. His current salary is $27.71. You end up, I don't even know where I got that written at a lot lower than the 89,000.
Sure.
And if you take the 48 hours with the overtime, I think it ends up about 77, which is still significantly lower than the 89. So what it amounts to is not only are we transitioning the director, and again, remember, we're talking about the position, not the individual.
Yep, I understand that.
So we're transitioning that position and giving the individual doing it about a 50% raise. Is that reasonable? That's where I'm at.
Nope, I understand your comments, and I think that you phrased it really well when you said you're basically codifying the overtime. That is correct, because the wages that I mentioned historically that he has achieved are due in large part due to the overtime. The other part that comes into it, and the reason why that's being codified, is because that's what the industry is showing for that type of position in the other agencies.
Well, I don't know, I've seen that same chart, and I don't have it in front of me, so I could misquote here, but I believe it was only one of them that was in that direction. The rest of them were lower, more in that 75, 80 or lower. And if he's working, the other part of that is it's a whole discussion beyond this, but, you know, if he's having to work more than the 48 hours a week, obviously he fills in occasionally, on a consistent basis, then we need to talk about staffing, because we're not staffed high enough to cover what needs to be covered.
Yeah, and that's why we talked about that most recent full-time employee. I think that was a year ago. That has helped quite a bit. Again, I think that the reason I brought it to this level was the other positions that I mentioned to you. Kalkaska was particularly one of our biggest competitors in the employment, and so that's why. Just looking for comments from others, and one of the potential things that we could do tonight is, rather than set this at a stated amount, we could come up with a range that the township is comfortable with, and we could, because we are doing something a little different with this position at this time, if the board's comfortable, we could put a range in for that, and then I could meet and discuss that with Nick and look over those numbers again, bring that information back to the board for a definitive number, but setting that range up.
With what has happened in the city last week with their vote, I know that they have MMR as their sole ambulance
Provider.
Thank you. I would assume that those wages would be part of what you looked at. I don't know if they will change with the vote. I would assume that they will increase with the vote.
So we didn't have MMR's wage data. We'd had two other municipalities in Kalkaska, and Kalkaska's is through the hospital.
Okay. I just assume that the cities, that MMRs would be higher than an individual township, because it is more of a corporate
Sure.
ambulance, so.
Yeah.
And I know our previous director went there, so.
No, he didn't. He didn't go to MMR.
Well, he went to Northlight, that became MMR.
I thought he was at First Response or something like that down in
Grand
Grand
Rapids.
Rapids.
Well,
Either way,
Regardless.
yeah.
Yes, well, I think you'll find that MMR's wages are not I was going to say not compatible, that's not true. But I think you'll find that they're lower than what we're offering.
Sure.
When I look at from the payroll perspective, I see that a lot of vacation time and personal time is being forgiven for our medical director because they aren't taking that time. And that, that burns them out, and potentially, because work without that vacation time is a big burden. I get that. By changing them to a 40-hour-a-week position as a salary, they wouldn't have the 48-hour week vacation benefit. It would go back to a 40-hour-a-week benefit. Still 48 hours of personal time a year, but each week's vacation accrual would be at 40 hours instead of 48, right? That's
Yeah.
what I would expect.
Yes. Yeah. And it's interesting because with the ambulance, vacation is so much more, it's very different for full-time paramedics because they're 48 hours and they can pocket those days and put those days near each other, that oftentimes they're not as,
They could have a week.
they don't have to draw, they don't have to draw on their vacation as much as, say, you might in your
Wouldn't
regular
be us, but it would be
position.
our other employees,
Yeah.
since we don't get.
Yeah. So,
I just wanted to make sure that I was looking at it
Yeah.
correctly that way as well. When we have to do the adjustment in the payroll system, we
Yep.
have to accommodate for 40 hours, not 48 for
Yep.
each vacation week.
yeah. And happy to take whatever direction from the township board. We just took a look at it, and this was the number that we had agreed upon. Go ahead, Trace.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't necessarily have an issue with this, because I don't want him to go backwards. And I know you and he have looked at this over the last couple of years, because it was talked about last year, and I don't think we were ready for that, changing him to a salary position. So I don't necessarily have a problem with this. If we feel like we have to do a range, we can do a range and come back with the research that you did and back it up and then set it, but I'm okay with this at this point.
I guess what's the general intent to go from, in this case, to go from hourly to salary? Is it to keep wages, or the cost of the township at a kind of an expectation? Keep it from being variable from year to year, or from?
That is true, but I would say it's more from making a position that can go from easily burnout to a more attainable, and also more reflective. Now that we have, as Tracy mentioned, it was mentioned last year, and we didn't do it last year because we knew we were really short a full-timer. We weren't short, we could fill in, but it was putting a lot of stress on a lot of the full-time paramedics because a lot of them were pulling in overtime, and now they're not. You can see the straight 96 hours. So that's a good thing. And then this was also to just, in a sense, codify that and then make it a more attainable position. So it's not, personally, just speaking as his manager, I see him continually putting in more effort than 40 hours a week consistently, and I don't see that changing. But this more regulates his hours makes it reflect more what he's doing, which is a daily application to work, rather than just like the 2 shifts of 24. He still, even with this, in the 40 hours, we'll pull a 12-hour shift once a week because we want him on that truck, keeping up his skill sets, making sure he's, the most familiar with everything that we're doing and have on a truck.
And doesn't he drive the Echo unit that we
He
just talked
does.
about? So there's sort of an on-call expectation
There's a
kind of baked into
huge
that?
on-call expectation with that. As a matter of fact, sometimes I feel like he feels like me, and maybe even to more of an extent where you're not really away from the job. So that is definitely a sense of it, for sure. Glenn?
I guess, and I don't want to get into I don't know what everybody makes as far as directors at EMS. The one thing I do know, though, is in the last few years with emergency services, whether it's firefighters, paramedics, it's like a bidding war out there. So if we set it a little higher, hopefully that's going to eliminate it as far as we're concerned. Because we've all seen good firefighters we had go someplace else, they start getting paid a little more. That's my concern with this position, that
Yeah.
we need somebody in there that's here and that they're gonna stay here.
I mean, I'll be real honest, when I looked at this number and when Nick and I were talking, I would have easily been comfortable with like an 86.5, but then when we were looking at it, and I didn't want him to go backwards, we were at that wage, and when I saw what the other ones were, I mean, again, I feel very, very similarly to Glenn, which is how we ended at this number. We've come a long way in emergency medical services in East Bay Township, and it's in no small part to Nick and his vision. So I appreciate that, and he does do, not that this is any part of a specific review, but he does do a very good job for us at East Bay. And I know, again, we're talking about the position and not the person. But again, if a different person were to fill it, we would also be adjusting it differently too.
When I did a quick look for the year, he's on track to make more than this if he continues with his hours this year. A lot of it, granted, is not hour straight time, it's time and a half or double time. So the hours themselves may not be so different, but because of them being times 1.5 or times 2, it grows pretty quickly.
And again, I'm happy to do what the board asks, whether it's approves this or whether we approve a range, and I go back and talk with them either way.
A range seems reasonable because it is a precedence that we'd be setting. Someday, it'll be different persons in those positions. I would expect that when we revisit it, the board would go with a higher range, or a higher amount, but it would be in a range.
Yeah, I would say, like, so for example, like our director of planning and zoning, there are other planners that we may hire that I may not pay that to. So this is a bit specific to that person. There's other positions and the same thing. I didn't mean to just pick on her, but there's other positions in that same.
And we have many professionals
part.
working for us. We are very blessed with that, for sure. And I think we are an employer of choice because we do look at benefits and wages with a true eye. We really want to retain them. I get all of that.
I know when he took this position, I can tell you to the dime, he came over at the exact same price that he was at the other organization for. And I can tell you to the dime because he really wanted to take this job, but he didn't want to go backwards. And so we literally priced out all of the benefits, everything, to make sure, and came over at exactly that amount. Is there any other comments on other positions within this chart? I tried to put some footnotes to answer some questions, and again, you know, the note within the election area. But if there isn't, I'd be happy to accept a motion or accept a discussion on a range.
But when you say a range, that's just for this document, and then we'll discuss it later to figure where he fits in that range? Because if he's going to a salaried position, you just determine what his salary is, and he gets it broke down.
So that's kind of what I did here.
But that's what I'm saying. So what's the range do?
Well, I'm
for
saying
you?
if that's not what you're thinking is acceptable, if you're thinking, well, hey, I'm thinking more what I've seen, you had mentioned you had seen the one table, the Excel spreadsheet. If you're thinking, I don't know, 75 is more, I don't know, you know, what you're thinking, but, you know, if you want to say, look, go back and discuss, and we're comfortable with, you know, 70 to 85 or something like that. I'm just giving you an option, if this is not acceptable to you. But again, I mean, we can do a motion as it is, we can do a range, whatever the board would like to do.
So if you go with everybody else and you get rid of this because this isn't, the salary is later on the agenda, right? Going from exempt to salary isn't.
But this reflects it.
Right, but we already discussed that if we wanted to change somebody's wages at a different time, we could do it later. So for the purpose of this resolution, if we just take it from 2771 and add the 1.032 like everybody else, we can move on from this and go into the discussion of salary as a different line item.
You can. I was assuming that this would be handled here, and then the other agenda item was just looking at those job descriptions. But we can absolutely do that. And confirming that he was going to that type of designation on the hours, the exempt. But we can definitely do that. We can take the 2771, turn it to an hourly rate, and move the discussion onto that piece if you'd like.
Well, that was my only question, is that if, you know, I just don't think we're going to want to set it at 89.5, but that's my opinion, not everybody else's. But if we approve it at 89.5, it's approved, it's done, that's my point. Because we're not going to discuss it later and then lower that, just like anybody else's.
Right, and that's why I suggested if we just move it on to the 3.2, then we can move this line item, and then we can discuss it later. The other option we could do is very easily make a range from 77,000 to 90,000 on a salaried position, but then we're also right there making it a salaried position, which, just trying to move it forward.
Well, let's just tackle a little bit of both. This reflects a salaried position. Is there anyone who has a problem with an exempt salaried position as the medical director?
I just want to make sure that legal is okay with that, because there's different laws on how that works. And depending on what your attorney says could be a different reflection on what can happen there.
So I think that we are fine with this, and I'm happy to confirm that, but I don't see that specific question, but I'm happy to confirm that.
Yeah, I think the only problem you really run into is when you talk about minimum wage, and this is not a consideration here. So if you set someone's salary at a rate where they're making less than minimum wage, then you're
Just to
concerned.
be clear, Are we saying then that the supervisor would go back and negotiate a salary for the director, and we would pass this minus the director's salary? Is that,
Well, instead of saying, well, what I suggested a minute ago was to take out the transfer position to exempt, add the 1.032 percentage, so it's 28.59 an hour, so that we can get away from resolution, and then we can talk about the salary in a minute or another time, but it doesn't have to be done right now.
Okay, that's fine.
is that your motion?
I did not make a motion, I just threw it out there as an idea. Do you want me to make that motion? Okay, I'll make a motion to approve resolution
This one will be 35. 35.
2023-35 with the change on Department 651 Director, changing, removing the statement transition position to exempt and making that a COLA adjustment of 3.2% to an hourly rate of 28.59.
61.
Oh, I got 59, but okay.
28.
I had 60, so it all depends on how you do it.
28.60704, and we always round up.
Okay, 28.61 per hour.
Okay, is there support?
Support it.
Okay, a motion is made by Walters and support by Bartlett to approve Resolution 2023-35. Any further discussion?
I just did a quick calculation, and based on that, with 8 hours a week of overtime each week, it's 77, like 77,350.
Yep. And then the additional and reason why he doesn't slide backwards is because he does that much more on top of that. Okay, is no further discussion? And we'll do a roll call vote.
Walters.
Yes.
Bartlett.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
S. Cortade.
Yes.
M. Cortade.
Yes.
Lyle.
Yeah.
And Friend.
Yes. Okay, with that, we will move on to resolution updating the fiscal year 2024 cost of permits, application fees, licenses, and initial escrow. And you will see with this that we really don't have any changes for you, except for we did look at the land division and asked the assessor on an average land division how much time she's spending, which can, on an average, be about 8 hours. And so we also looked at what other townships were, had for land divisions, and you'll see that in the footnote. And so that is a 74% increase in that adjustment, but it is reasonable, actually, it's very reasonable considering the amount of time she's putting into those. And the other township, they're comparable to the other townships as well. So with that, any questions on those fees? And you will notice too that the ambulance fees have been added in here from last year. Mindy?
I was just wondering why the mileage on the ambulance is so low.
That may be mandated. I'm not sure that it is, but it could be.
I'm just, because it looks, you'd think it'd be the federal rate there, and it's
I
not,
think
so.
it's what they can charge. Well, I
I
don't
was-
know.
I was thinking it was
Some
high.
of it's Medicaid.
It says $30 a mile.
That's the way, it's hard to tell you. That's right.
Oh,
Oh, yeah, you're right. So
all right, then never mind.
let me just, hold on a second.
I was thinking that said 30 cents a mile.
This would be 65.5 is the federal mileage reimbursement rate for, I don't know if that's what it is for emergency vehicles.
Hold on one second. I have the email exchange right here. And let me go back. You know, he has $30 on here. And I said per mile, and he said, yes, per mile. It may very well be per mile.
Okay.
And that could include some of the basic things that they do
Do,
while they're
right, exactly.
transporting.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
So, I mean, because there
Yeah.
are,
No, I was
You know,
thinking that there,
tubes
I'm
and
fine with
stuff.
$30. I was thinking 30 cents a mile was way too low.
yeah, well, I put it in there as we had discussed it in the email, and then I thought, well, maybe that was a typo when you were saying that, so,
There's 22 cents per mile for medical and moving purposes.
maybe, so, okay. So with that, any other questions or a motion? This would be Resolution 2023-36.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-36.
Second.
Support, okay. Motion by Walters, support by M. Cortate. Further discussion?
Just one question
Yeah.
real quick. And I know we've been through these fees,
Yeah.
a number of times to make some adjustments.
Yeah,
Since a lot of these are effectively basically a wage cost to the township to perform these activities, why would they not go up with COLA as well? And I know it's not
3.2.
a one-for-one.
yeah. And really, I mean, I had talked with Claire about an adjustment, and we did a big mid-year adjustment last year, and I think we went up, I can't remember the percentage or the stock amounts, but, and I looked at that, and it ends up putting them at some pretty quirky amounts. And so what we tend to do then is like move them up by, say, $5 or so. So what we probably will do will like do it instead like every other year, or every third year, and then jump that in a percentage that would capture that.
Okay.
Because these just get to be, like I said, a lot of quirky amounts for, and trust me, this is a lot of changing when you put these fees in place. There's a lot of places you have to change them, so. But, good point, though, I do think that even with last year's adjustment, I do think there is still a lot to change. And when you look at it from the time that we spend on those, I do think that there could be even more of an adjustment for that. I can remember when, but just before we had hired Claire, we had a consultant in. I was a planner from Wade Trim.
Williams
Williams
and
and
Works.
Works?
No, this was filling in between planners, and it was through, is Arthur,
Oh, yes.
can't think of Arthur's last name, but he works with Wade Trim. And he was like, Beth, you need to look at the revenues, because he said, in his opinion, and this is just his opinion, a planning and zoning could almost be, or close, self-sustaining. I don't think it's ever going to be that way, and I think that there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't get close to there, but certainly, I don't think that we got quite there, even though the last fee adjustment was larger for us. So, okay, remind me where we were at. Did we do a roll call on that one?
no, you haven't voted
No.
yet.
2023-36.
But we did get the motion from Walters and support by M. Cortate. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
Okay, Walters.
Yes.
M. Cortate.
Yes.
Cook.
Yes.
Lyle.
Yeah.
S. Cortate.
Yes.
Bartlett.
Yes.
And Friend.
Yes. Okay, with that, and keep me on track if you happen to notice, but I think that we are through everything with the budget there. And we'll skip to page 129, which has page numbers now. How about that? Just want to check one thing on this cover sheet real quick. I want to make sure that we did get everything. Yep, we did. Okay. So with that, we do come to this topic of the ambulance director, as it mentions in this description. It's currently classified as an hourly non-exempt position at 48 hours a week. And we would be transitioning that, it's recommended to transition that to a 40-hour work week salaried exempt classification, following the same holiday vacation schedule that we do as a township staff. And this would be effective, we're asking that it would be effective January 1st of 2024. And if that is the case and the township concurs with that, I have asked Nick, and he just updated the job description so that it would be consistent with any changes. And it's really just the position description at the top that shows that.
Yeah, the nice thing about, if I can just say something, the nice thing about this position going to salary is currently anything over 40 hours a week is not captured with the pension. And so they may be putting $20,000, $30,000 in overtime wages, but it doesn't go on their pension wages. The pension is based only on 40 hours a week. So I think that's a nice benefit to recognize the fact that they are going to be able to receive that pension too. Roundabout ways,
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yep, that's a good point. Glenn, did you have a comment?
No,
Oh, okay, sorry.
No,
It looked like you were waiting to say
I
something
can
there.
yell.
Okay, what is the recommended motion was moved to approve the ambulance director job description, which changes the position to salaried exempt position as of January 1st, 2024. Of course, this motion would change that, but I didn't anticipate needing to adjust the salary with this because I thought it would be with the wage table. So we would just need to adjust this motion.
Well, I started this, and I don't have a problem with in fact, this probably is a good idea for that job to be salaried, because there's really no set hours to it. It's whenever. I guess my concern is, and I think it was mentioned too, a little bit about burnout, but I don't know. I worked those hours, and I don't know. But if he's working currently at $27 an hour, but making $90,000 a year with the overtime he's putting in, that's a tremendous amount of hours during the year.
Well, he's not quite there. He's like in the mid to upper 80s.
Yeah, well, still.
But that number that I gave you on the table factored in the 3.2%.
It doesn't matter. The point is that if he's a 48-hour work week, 52 weeks is 2,500 hours a year, roughly 2,496, I think it is. But that gets you up to somewhere around the $77,000 area. If he's working up in the 85, he's working beyond that. He's working close to 3,000 hours a year. And I think that's an unreasonable expectation. So my concern isn't so much the dollar amount, but what is our expectation? You talk about a 40-hour work week, but he's not working a 40-hour work week. He never has, he never will. The position never will be. And I know that's just a way of doing the accounting, but at $28.60 an hour, which would be his new wage, and to get to the $89.5, that's $43 an hour. That's a jump. That's quite a jump. And that's why it's difficult when we transition from working hourly to salary, because it's exactly what happened with me. That's the way I remembered it too, is that the discussion back and forth, what does it work out to be? So I guess I wonder, what is our expectation? If our expectation is that he's going to work that many hours in order to achieve that salary, because that's what he would be at now, I think that's a little bit unreasonable. And we've gone from a pretty small unit to bigger, and I know we've got 3 trucks now, and we're probably going to have to look, when he talks about missing 20-some or 30-some calls a month, we might be having to talk about putting on some part-time second truck and all that stuff. That all comes with it, but that's the business. That doesn't change a whole lot with what he does, because, that's just changing the numbers. I really think you need to look at staffing. I really think that, I know it's tough, but I think we're competitively priced. One thing that's going to happen, and it's been mentioned, that when the city transitions now from MMR to doing it themselves, there are going to be some MMR employees looking for work because their trucks are gone. So either they're going to transition somewhere in that group or somewhere else. So I think there might be bodies available. But back when I first got back on this board, I made a comment about I was really concerned with all the high-paid salaries, and I got called out for it, rightfully so, because it was kind of a misstep and misstatement on myself. But this is kind of where I'm getting at. It is our salaries have been increasing exponentially in some positions in this building, and it's based on the individual and what they're doing. I get that. But as a government, we need to be responsible to the people and where we spend their dollars. It's just tough. It's tough. It's tough for me to see a position jump that much and actually technically lower the expectations of the number of hours to be put in. So I guess that's where we're at, is what do we want to do? Are we going to raise his wages to that height based on what? This is one reason why a couple of years ago I asked for a wage study, because now we would know where we actually stand against everybody else, not just doing a random pick here and there. And I'm not saying, but I'm just saying that if we had a true wage study done, then we would know where everything is at. And maybe that's where we need to think about doing in the future, to make sure we're in line.
Are you,
Go ahead.
no, I didn't want to interrupt. I wasn't sure if you were done or not. So a couple things. One, you mentioned the 3 trucks. So just so that people who are listening are aware, we do have 3 rigs right now. We run 1 rig fully staffed. We have the 3rd rig because we weren't sure what was exactly happening in the industry. We were concerned we might need that 3rd one. And so we held on to it because it was valued at only $15,000. And so we've continued that. The missing calls that have been mentioned, that's been a recent uptick, and we do think that those trends in those months, one, have been impacted by residents. That we see that all the time, right, in those summer months. But in particular, the months that it's been the highest recently, we believe it's been due to some of the staffing in the emergency room, because what's happening is we're not able to leave the patient as soon as we normally would have. Because they're short-staffed, we have to make sure that patient is stable and has care until they can accept the patient. That ties us up longer, that makes us miss more calls, and that's why that call went up then. It would be fabulous to think that we could network with the hospital and there might be changes. We're not really sure that that's, going to happen or what time frame that would happen. So just to let people know that. So we are keeping a watch on that. We're not trying to react too quickly and too harshly in one direction or the other, but are keeping a continual watch on that to see if there's certain times, dates, months that we will look at putting a second truck on. As far as staffing and burnout, I do think that this board really corrected that issue satisfactorily with adding that most recent FTE a year ago. And I think we didn't have them in place until, maybe the first quarter or something like that of last year. But that has helped a lot, and that's not just on one person's back. That's on several people, full-timers as well, and even some part-timers. And then as far as salaries changing within the township, I think this board has been really uniform over how we're looking at these salaries. And that's part of the reason we've been looking at these annually with this table, is making sure that, okay, it's not just picking winners and losers. And yes, we will make adjustments specific to a position and even a person if there's a reason that warrants it. And as I mentioned, that's why we have the column next to the 3.2. If we have industry trends that change something, if we have a shortage in a position or something like that, that's where that comes into play. So salaries have not been bobbling all over by any means. And then with respect to this, we are codifying it quite a bit. And there are a lot of also mitigating things too. So it's not just a jump from that 27, whatever it was, at 2,080 hours a year to this amount. It is a large jump. There's a lot of mitigating factors in there with the overtime hours, double overtime hours, all of those things. And again, we did look at those industry numbers. Oh, and I will mention that the two other places that we looked at that we did know the salaries were the assistant chiefs within Metro. So, and those assistant chiefs are Tony Posey and Brian Belcher. And Tony has been with the organization a long time, but newer to that position. Belcher has been with that organization a long time and in that position a long time. So we looked at those salaries as well. That was a part for that comparison. So I think that this is a good move for the township and for the employee in going to the exempt 40-hour week with that on-call expectation. I guess with that, I would move to approve that the ambulance director job description changes the position to a salaried exempt position as of January 1st, 2024. And that the salary return to be set between 85 and 90 and 89.5 at the December board meeting.
Can you repeat those numbers for me, please?
Sure. That would be, I'll just do the whole motion. Move to approve the ambulance director job description to change the position to a salaried exempt position as of January 1st, 2024, with the salary to be settled between $85,000 a year and $89,500 a year, with that finalized number to come back to the board at the December meeting for approval.
Support that.
Okay, motion is made by Friend, supported by Bartlett. Do we have further discussion?
Can we make sure that we have a legal opinion on that?
Sure, no problem.
I guess my only question, I know that Matt mentioned what our expectations are. If currently our other full-time paramedics are expected to work 48 hours a week, and this is a 40-hour week salary, how many hours are we reasonably expecting that he will pull?
Yeah, I mean, It is it's based on what is needed. It is a salaried exempt position unless we if we are recommended to do otherwise, I'll certainly do that, bring that back to you. But very much like you are, Sue, I am, Tracy is. I can tell you, I am on call all the time. And that's inclusive of the ambulance, which reports to me, and planning and zoning, assessing, elections, you have the same thing.
Sure, I just.
So, yeah.
Well, are we expecting him
Yeah.
to pull 50, 55? I mean, obviously, if there's a call, he's going to run for it.
Right.
I
What-
I think he's just geared that way. He's going to go.
Yeah.
But do we have to have that consideration that we have to pull him back sometimes because he is putting in too many hours?
So are you thinking that needs to more be in the job description, not
I probably,
necessarily
yeah, probably.
tied
Well,
to his salary?
I think the position, it is listed as full-time, 40 hours per week. It does have scheduling flexibility in there. We can look again to see, I believe that we didn't change a whole lot of the specific duties and responsibilities, although I can speak with Nick in more detail about that as well and bring any of that back. But I would say that I mean, that's just the expectation, is that you meet the duties and responsibilities as outlined. Similarly, you have the election and have to pull it off, no matter.
But as an employee, the expectation is probably different than as an elected official. I mean, none of us would, but we could show up 1 hour a year and still get the same wage.
Sure.
That's not the expectation of an employee.
Nope.
And I certainly want to make sure that the compensation correctly identifies that, okay, if you're starting to put 55 hours a week in or 60 hours a week, and
And I
we need to
think-
start pulling that back.
I think that's a little bit more management and working with the staff. And again, when I see that type of thing, Nick and I discuss those things and we bring that forward. That's why we brought you an FTE the end of last year. So again, that's when I would notice that as a manager to him and bring something forward to you.
No?
Yeah,
What if you put in there a minimum of 40 hours a week? That way there's nothing concrete. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not looking at the individual, again, the job, so, because any salary positions I've ever worked in my life, it was like 55 hours minimum, but I realize times are different. But if you put minimum 40 hours a week, that takes away from somebody saying, I only have to work 40 hours a week, which our present person would never say that. But this isn't going to cover the present, this is the job description. And
Yeah.
it saves debating what we've been sitting here debating for a while. I don't know, it's just an idea.
yeah, and I would probably have that suggestion factor in when I talk with the attorney. Yeah.
Thought you were going to leave.
I'm just getting uncomfortable, thought I changed positions.
Do we have other questions or comments?
No,
We do have a motion. Yep.
you know, I think it makes probably the most sense to move to a salary position. I can't say that I've ever ridden shotgun with him for the day, but I can imagine.
You would be welcome to.
As a director, you know, he's probably, you know, at home cooking dinner with the family and probably has to catch a call and step out. And, you know, there's probably a level, if I had to guess, probably a level of, you know, conflict or guilt there. You know, do I write down on my timesheet that I took a call for 15 minutes here? Are we really getting that granular with things? Does the township owe me more money? You know, that probably just something he does, I have to imagine, as part of, you know, taking on that role. And ultimately, you know, you talk about, you know, 40 hours, 35 hours, 55 hours, whatever it is, part of his reporting to the township, to you, Beth, I imagine, is just making sure that the job's getting done. At the end of the day, when things are being taken care of, it's kind of irrelevant week to week, what the hours actually are. I mean, we have a standard of 40 hours a week, but I know for myself, I'm salaried and have been for a long time, and there's weeks where the work is light and you can get away with a 36, 38-hour week, once or twice a year. And then other times where I'm traveling and I'm leaving out of the airport at 6 o'clock in the morning and coming back at midnight, and I don't get paid for any of that time. So it's just the ebbs and flows of the hours, and you get the job done. That's what the expectation is.
Yeah.
Well, that's salary.
Yeah.
You're getting paid to do the job.
Right.
Period.
Right.
And then whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Okay, and I will talk with Nick too about that range, particularly in light of the additional amount from the retirement too, so, all right, with that,
We have a motion on the floor.
we do, yeah.
I just didn't want you moving on to something different.
Oh. No, with that, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by no? Okay, we'll move forward with that, and I'll bring you back that final recommendation for the salary amount in December. Okay, with that, we will move on to the assessing department and job descriptions. And we do have our county equalization director, who is our assessor of record, Jim Baker, here with us. And Jim, why don't you just have a seat right up here at the table or at the podium, whichever you're more comfortable at, but both mics are working. So with this, and I think I mentioned this very generally with you guys in the budget discussions, but as I say here, the county's approach to township regarding an interest in discontinuing the current contract for services, and at that meeting, meaning the budget meeting, it was discussed to bring back an estimated budget and job descriptions for the department. So these are presented for you. You will see the proposed department, plus the additional expenditures that we don't have logged in right now that the county takes care of, and that total amount, and our rough total current contract amount for this year. And it would drive us up a little bit, and I do think that's probably somewhat a factor of our, some of those attorney's fees that we have with MTTs, salaries, benefits as well. The one thing, and I think I mentioned this to you guys at the meeting, that I'm particularly happy about is Jim and I have had some really good discussions, and he's been very helpful as far as if we are transitioning next year, not to leave each other in a lurch. I mean, I'm not going to say, Jim, your people have to be out of here February 1st. Oh, well, I would never do that anyway, because that's before March Board of Review. But I wouldn't do that. And he's not going to say, you know what, they are gone, Beth, on April 15th after March Board of Review. He's going to work with me and has offered to sit in on interviews with me and that sort of thing. But do you want to talk about maybe some of the facts on the ground that you have at the county that kind of makes you look toward this?
Yeah, some of the issues I face, Susan is going to retire April 1st is the date she seems to have picked.
And that's Susan Caricos for anyone watching, not,
Yeah, not me. We get interchanged.
they get confused a little bit.
And so she's leaving in April. Joel, who was here for a while, I pulled him back into the county, and he's going to retire in the middle of May. I desperately need to bring Darren back to the county when Joel leaves. And so that leaves me looking at you as a contract with no ideas on staffing. So, in the past, the wage scales for the county were never really set up for the added responsibilities of the assessing duties, and we've worked at making them work in the past, but I'm concerned that going out into the future, it would kind of hamper my search, and I wouldn't be able to be flexible enough with the county wages where I have to work within and the unions and everything. So that's when I approached Beth and said, you know, you really have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity. We'd be able to end this contract. I wouldn't have 2 employees dangling that I'd have to lay off or something, you know. If, it just seems like a perfect point to where, you know, we would provide the full-time assessing status quo until, you know, April 2nd, and then maybe by May 31st, I would leave a person for the transition period kind of thing is what I'm hoping for. But again, you know, I want this to be successful. There's no sense in doing it if it's not, so.
And I think some of that will depend timing-wise on the amount of experience that we get with someone. But certainly there will be, even with a very experienced person, a minimal amount of time just to make them familiar with East Bay.
Yes, I mean, there are nuances that you even saw today, you know, on different kinds of water bottoms and things that we want to hand off and make sure people understood what we were trying to accomplish with what we were doing, and let them be knowledgeable when they step into the position.
And I think that certainly contractually, this will change a lot because we won't have that contractual relationship. However, I think Jim realizes, but if he doesn't, he will now, how much I think that functionally, it should look and will look very seamless potentially to the residents and to the resources we feel we have available to us. County equalization still is of service to the townships and their assessors. So I still plan on calling Jim when I have tough MTT questions, and still the assessors would still be able to call on Jim for his expertise, just as they would out of any township right now. So it's not a goodbye, it's just a different type of relationship. And the job descriptions were provided to you after the initial packet went out, but they are in that supplemental packet on pages 3 and 4. And where these came from was from taking a look, two things. One was from the assessing book that came out from MTA, which actually has some sample job descriptions in it for assessors. And then I also took a look at our planning and zoning office specialists to look at the kind of relationship those two positions had to each other, and similarly put in that relationship here between the director of assessing and the assessing administrative specialist. So kind of had that same relationship going on there. So that's where the job descriptions came from. And then again, you see the proposed budget amount as well. And I did put in the MAOO at 82,000 and an MCAT at 54,500. Those,
So in
Sure.
old school, it's a
level 3.
Level 3 and a level 2.
No, level 3 and a level 1,
Okay, thank you.
which I'm not even sure was a level 1, maybe it was just a certificate. But anyway, and what we'd probably be looking for is a relatively experienced MAAO. One of the things that Jim has taught me in East Bay Township is how unique we are compared to some of the other townships in Grand Traverse County. And I said, why? And he said, Beth, think about this. You have not only do you have bodies of water, you have two kinds of bodies of water, which are different. You have the Great Lakes, and then you have inland lakes. He said you have a large amount of residential, but you also have, you know, you have some of the apartments, plus you do have the residential and, I'm sorry, not the residential, the commercial.
Commercial,
Yep, the waterfront.
some of the rural commercial.
And then a little bit of industrial. So he said you really have a lot of everything going on, where there are some other townships which are pretty much residential only. I would guess that'd be like Long Lake, primarily residential, Garfield, primarily commercial and industrial. So, anyway, so that's what the MAAO, I would be looking at somebody more experienced. I did put the higher numbers of what I would want to go out with that. Say, for example, with the MAAO range, I would probably want to look at like a 75 to 82, 76 to 82, somewhere in there. And I have talked about that not only with Jim, but I've also looked at the ads that are on the Michigan Assessors Association webpage, and they have published their, you know, what they're listing at. So for example, the city of Traverse City was looking recently, and there was about 5 or 6 of them on the MAA site. And then as well, I talked with the teacher that I had for my MCAO, who was awesome, Shyla Kyander, who's probably known across the state. She's about had everybody as a student at one point or another, and talked with her about where do you think we would fit in here. And that's kind of where she had settled to. She's like, I think that would be right where you would probably want to be around for an experienced MAAO. So those are where those numbers came from. They're not set in stone. This isn't a budget for you to approve. This is just what we could look forward to and if we are transitioning away from that contract.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You mentioned the city being, searching. How, I don't know how to phrase my question. Has that been a vacancy for quite a while? Are we seeing these positions staying vacant longer than we have in the past? Is this going to be a problem getting staffing?
So there might be other specific, in specific circumstances with the city, but that one has been vacant for a little bit, and they have had it. I will tell you, just from an anecdotal standpoint, if you go to any assessor's class or meeting, it looks a lot like a Social Security, Medicare meeting. No offense to anybody, but it is a generally older population set that is doing assessing. Would you say that's accurate?
Yes, and there have been efforts to promote the profession and stuff, and I'm not sure, since there's been a lot of job creation, it's kind of went by the wayside. There's a lot more exciting things to do than assessing, so.
And I think that employers across the state are worried about that. I've heard many comments at a lot of either the conferences or workshops talking about the same thing. So that's kind of one of the reasons we came to this situation too, is, as you know, Jim mentioned, we're looking for everything in the toolbox to get what we need here, and the right person, the right job, credentials, all of that. And any little bit that gives us an extra advantage, and so not having to work with the union and the stricter scale with not much ability to change if needed, if the facts on the ground require it, is easier through the township.
So that was going to be one of my questions. I mean, I would assume we need to start looking now
Yeah.
to fill, hopefully, by April.
Yeah.
Because my guess is, and I have no idea because I'm not in that world, but there's not going to be somebody necessarily local that will fit our needs. So this is a person that's going to most likely have to transfer into Traverse City area. So
Yeah, it could be. This is one of
maybe we
the,
get lucky.
maybe, hopefully, knock on wood, right? But one of the reasons this is coming to you now in November and not December is I would like to get started on that process of advertising it. Now, there's not an assessor that's worth their salt that's going to come to us in January through March, because they should have a very healthy commitment to wherever they're assessing at that point in time, and they're going to want to get through a March Board of Review. So what we intend on doing is posting it with a fill date of like April 1 or after. But still getting the word out there and through, putting it on MAA, putting it out through the townships. It's just like planners, emergency directors, assessors. They have a small network and they channel through that. And just getting that word out there. And Shiloh would be one that I would lean onto to, talk to people about it and so forth. So I guess actually, really, I think well, I did put, I was going to say the motion is probably not correct, but I put based on discussion. So it would be, the motion would be to approve the job descriptions and authorize a posting of the positions, actually.
Make that motion.
Second.
Okay, motion by Bartlett and supported by M. Cortade. Further discussion?
The only comment is I want to thank Jim and the county. Those of us that have been around a while realize when you come in, where we were and where we are now is unbelievable. So
I know Lori Spencer took it on, and when I came in, I kind of finished up what she had started, and I think you're in an excellent position right now. We've been through 3 consecutive state audits that are 5 years apart, with the most recent one having a perfect score. We did a complete reappraisal. Lori did, I finished it, and much to Russ's chagrin, I had him basically do it all over again because we had so many different people looking at it. I wanted to, just get that last bit of uniformity out of it. And it was funny because he didn't quite see the need, but then when he started doing it, he said, yep, I picked up this little quirk or twerk, So it's been reappraised twice, basically. And that should be posted in your posting. That will draw the best people out of the woodwork, just clamoring for a good unit, so.
Great. Well, I'm going to be sending you the posting for comments, so. Yeah, Mindy?
Do we need to put, maybe this is on here and I'm just not seeing it right now, whether these are salaried or hourly positions?
It does say that they're full-time hourly 40-hour-a-week positions. What?
Can't you do that on both of them?
No, I have it on both of them.
It's on both of them.
I know the salary versus the hourly. Can't you have 40 hours a week salary and 40 hours a week?
Oh,
Hourly?
it doesn't, sorry, scratch that hourly. So full-time, it should say full-time, 40 hours per week. Thank you. Typo in there. And I will do, Jim, what's your recommendation on whether it's posting a salary range on these or whether it's, based upon credentials or experience in the listing? I've done both. I mean, not for assessors, but.
Yeah, I think that I personally like to see a range, and then depending on how a person interviews and where they seem to fit in that range, then you make an offer accordingly, is what
Okay.
I'm thinking.
Okay. Then what I would look at, based on that proposed budget that's in front of you, is that MAO. I would say, I would put that from 72 to 82,000. And I have the MCAT at 54.5, so I would probably put that at 45 to 55,000. Is that about?
That position, yeah, that, just off the top of my head seems right. I'd have to look a little more at it. But I mean, the MCAT position, I'm sure that probably the expectation would be to get your next certification, the MCAO. You know, I think you would be prudent to maybe put some language in there that you would hire an MCAT and then maybe offer some kind of small, well, not small, but I mean, some kind of
Yeah.
incentive to get their
Yeah.
MCAO. And you'll probably pull somebody local for that, for sure.
That
And
is
grow them
more,
in-house.
yeah, exactly. As a matter of fact, I have the position listed as, they either have to have the MCAT or could get the MCAT within the first 6 months of being employed. Because I think that administratively, you could teach some of those things and they get the MCAT. The MCAT's only like a 3-4 day course.
3-day course, and yeah, depending on when it's offered, you know, you just have to watch out for that.
That's why I put the 6 months, which is actually a little longer than what I wanted, but I didn't know when a state tax commission would be offering the class.
Maybe put something in there that 6 months or, you know.
Earliest.
Earliest, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
I want to say it's been great working with you. I appreciate all of you, and we've had a good ride, and there's a slight hesitation to end it, but it's just falling into place so well, I think, with the staffing levels and everything, that it just makes the most sense, I believe, to go back out on your own, but it's been a great ride. I appreciate everybody working with us.
Yeah, Matt's right. I can remember when the assessing was not in good condition, and I think the reason that, Lori agreed to take it on is she knew, or suspected how,
Yeah,
that it was not good. And the thing that people don't realize is when we went out for an RFQ at that time, we couldn't get anybody to give us proposals. Nobody wanted to because they knew that that complete reappraisal was necessary, which is a lot of work.
yeah. I'm not exactly sure, but I think the role is actually seized by the State Tax Commission, and
Not quite.
not quite, okay.
Probably should have been.
The pedal was just about hit, but
Just waiting for a stamp on the desk.
So now they have a designated assessor. So if it were in today's times, you would be,
If you fall into disrepair, then the designated assessor will.
good thing we're a long way from there
Yeah.
due to the county, so. All right.
Well, just from somebody who works very closely with them, it has been wonderful. I mean, I was here through the reappraisal, but Susan and Russ and Joel, Darren, they've all been great to work with and helps my position out a lot, so.
Yeah.
We work very closely together.
Definitely. So did you had a motion? Did we have a motion on
We
this?
did have a motion,
Bartlett, M. Cortate.
yeah, to go out for,
To approve the job
to
description?
approve the job description and place the ad.
Okay, would you consider amending it with those ranges of the 72 to 82 in the posting?
Yes.
And the 45 to 55?
Yeah,
And
that's
would
fine.
you,
That's fine.
okay, all right. So with that, further discussion? Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by no? Okay, thank you, Jim.
Jim,
Thank you.
just take back to the county that I do appreciate them stepping in because that was a big load.
Yeah, yep.
And there were people who did not want the county to take it over at that time, remember? There was some opposition to that. All right, with that, we'll move on to the buildings and grounds truck purchase. And this is something you have seen or heard about in front of you at the last two meetings, the October 9th, and it goes through that in the cover sheet, mentioned in the October 9th that we had gotten, looked at 3 different, what do you call it, dealerships. And you guys had mentioned, well, look at a purchase and bring that back. And October 24th, we did have one in mind, and the board wanted us to pursue that, if need be, with a deposit, which was not necessary. They said townships rarely go anywhere, and that is true. So this is, the first one that you have in front of you is the one that we are looking at purchasing. It is ready for us to pick up if that's the board's wishes. And this would be a 2023 Ford Super Duty F-250 SRW SL for $64,243. And then that plow is $10,603. We estimated, well, you saw the estimate in here for the salt spreader. We do not have the estimate yet for the lighting, but based on what we've done with the ambulance before, we estimated about $1,500. Or not with the ambulance, but just what we have seen on other vehicles and looking online at the costs. And the signage estimated less than $500. So the total cost for authorization is $68,700. So I have put a not to exceed in the motion of $70,000, just in case there was anything expected that went just a little haywire, which I don't anticipate that it will, but it would save me from bringing it back again. Are there questions?
I got a comment.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with the truck. What my concern is the salt spreader is what ruined the truck we had. And I'm not sure what the remedy is, but I know that all the brake lines, the frame, everything's rusting under that truck was caused by the salt spreader. So that's just my concern.
Yeah, probably cleaning it out as often as possible, and yeah.
I don't know if they make a guard that would hang down to keep salt from going under the truck or not, probably not, but that's my
Okay.
concern. But I
All
don't
right.
have a problem with the.
Okay.
truck or anything.
Appreciate that. Okay, good point. Now, we'll bring that up to Dan for sure. If you don't have a problem, is that a motion?
No, I don't have a problem. I'll make the motion.
Support.
Move to approve the purchase of a 2023 Ford Super Duty F-250 SRW SL for $64,243, which includes the plow, also approving the additional items required of a salt spreader, safety light, signage estimate at $68,700 for a total not to exceed $70,000.
Support.
Okay, a motion made, and thank you. There is one thing I forgot to put in the possible motion, and that is also requested to declare the current Ford F-250 and plow as surplus with disposal available to administration. Would you like to do that as a separate motion or add that to your motion? The,
I got to read something.
you just crack me up sometimes. So I did forget to put in the possible motion here, that last sentence under the description that says also requested to declare the current 250 and plow as surplus with disposal available to administration, and public surplus is our intended method of sale. Would you like to do that? Would we like the board to do that as a separate motion?
Go ahead, I'll go
And
with
put that on there. And would you? Okay, all right, fine. Is there further discussion?
Well, the only thing is this GM guy is going to have a hard time voting this way, but I will.
I can appreciate that. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by no? Okay, thank you very much. Definitely a tricky time to buy a vehicle, so I appreciate your flexibility. let's see. Cell tower proposal. Where do I have the sheet on this? Hold on one second here.
The 3 o'clock edition.
Yeah. Yes, so you'll have some of the information sent under separate cover, which is available to anyone to inspect here at the Township Hall. We just don't put this online because of some of the negotiation requests. But anyway, this is MD7, which is a mobile infrastructure and consulting and investment firm. And they routinely try to negotiate the AT&T cell tower contracts down to save AT&T funding. And typically I brush them off, but I did say, well, you know, are you actually going to make an offer or just continue to call? And they did, as you can see, submit some offers, and we analyzed those, went through those with Max Machuda as well. And what I did, and I put the synopsis for you, I have a nice friendly Excel spreadsheet if you would like to see it, but it's kind of just my brain on Excel, which is, you know, this is a little easier to follow. So what I did was I looked at what is our current net present value right now? And ours is at 1.1 million for what our contract is. If we were able to get an extension on that, as we have, you know, how they do the 4th, 5th, 6th Amendment and so forth, if we were able to extend that through what all of the other terms were that they were suggesting, then our net present value ended up closer to that 2.5 at 2.482 million. Now, his offer had different monthly rates and had very common escalation rates of 3% and 3.5%. And you can see the net present values for those range from 1.9 to 1.988 million. He also had a lump sum payment with a 99-year easement. This was a judgment call on my part. I did not feel comfortable with a 99-year easement and did not really look at that. I felt that that was quite a lengthy period of time and felt uncomfortable with that. I did look at the lump sum payment as an option with the 45-year easement. And that net present value was just over $2 million. So that was their offer. And so what I did was I went back and I said, okay, if our net present value, if we could continue this for the term that they want, is 2.482, and I know that for them to want to do something, they need to make some leeway, and we have to give some leeway, but yet we want something out of this too. Well, what we would get is the extended period of time guaranteed, because really, we're not guaranteed anything right now after 2035. So the more extended years, so what's that, another 12 years? So we would be guaranteed another 30 years worth of payments, and so what's that, you know, value to us? So I looked at, for us, I looked at finding a net present value that was halfway between what they were looking at and what we were potentially guaranteed at the 2.482. So I looked at the difference between the 2.482 and I believe I took the 1.988, split the middle, and then said, okay, if we're looking at about what was that, 2.25, where would we have to be at with all these options to get a roughly 2.5 or so? And with option 1, it was that 6,400 with 3.5%. With the 3%, it was at 68.65. Using the same terms, he had at 2051. I did not counter on the 99-year easement, and then on the lump sum, it was at 1.3 million versus the 1.2 million that they offered. I sent those to Max. He took a look at them and said, these are a possibility for sure, and he would present them to MD7, which he did. They conferred with AT&T and came back that they would accept the 1.3 million for the 45-year easement. So the next step in going through and, finding out if this is definitely something we want to do is a letter of interest that we would sign with MD7. I had Peter look at the letter, and let me find this really quick for you guys, if it's right here. Yes, it is right after the page that has the net present values. It's dated November 9th. Does yours say November 9th on that letter?
And this one says August 29th.
Okay.
Keep going.
Last 2 pages.
So this was updated, and let me tell you, from the one that was sent to you in the packet and this one, here are the two differences. And these are what Peter had me ask them to change, which they did. In the second line, it identifies MD7 with a comma after that says an authorized agent of AT&T. He wanted to see that in there. And at the very bottom on the first page, it says this agreement shall terminate the sooner of. It was at first 180 days or the date of the execution of the transaction closing documents. And he had me have them add 180 days or if either party elects to terminate the transaction. So we can cancel that at any time upon notice to them. And Peter did have some additional thoughts and questions and information on the specifics of some of the equipment access, those types of things that they go through in the regular amendment of our contract. But those really come after the letter of intent. So we sign the letter of intent, then we start to review those terms. We either go forward or not. And I did confirm with Peter, this doesn't commit us to that. It puts us to getting to the details to know if that's where we want to end up going with that. Now, this was based on the difference really between those payments and the lump sum payment is obviously with the payments, we're getting that stream of payments. Again, those go through 2051, and I did take for that 45-year, the stream of payments, it went through 2051 just to get the net present value, but it would go to the ending of the 45 years. With the lump sum, what that does is you factor in the reinvestment of that because it gains interest and then that goes back in. So the interest is factored into there that you would make on that 1.3 million. And I put that interest at I think it was a pretty conservative rate of 3%. And when you jump it to say like a 5%, which I think is probably more realistic of our overall average, it definitely increases that net present value significantly above actually our original of the 2.482 at the top of the sheet. Do you have any questions or thoughts on this? The motion asked to be considered is the motion to approve the MD7 letter of intent regarding the AT&T cell tower lease located at 3650 Yorkshire Drive.
Do you want the date, since we've had multiple?
Yeah, you could definitely, because the date for the earlier one would not have those two terms in it.
So,
The November,
letter of intent dated November 9th.
correct.
Question,
Yes.
why do we even want to do this?
Well, for the money.
Okay, now I went through and figured out, and I used $7,100 a month for the tower. Times 12 months is $85,200 a year, times 45 years is 3.834 million. Okay, and they're offering us.
Wait, hold on. You used how much and how long? Repeat that one more time.
Well, $7,100 a month.
Okay, which is about our current,
That's less than what we're getting, because I didn't figure in a 3% or 3.5 3.5 increase annually.
So right now, we have the 7121, so that's $21
Well, let's use
less.
71, that's what I figured.
Okay, and we're at 3%.
And that's $85,200 a year. And if you times that by 45 years, and remember, we're not figuring any increase into that, I come up with $3,834,000. So why would we want to take a discount?
So you're not comparing the right terms, the term length, so they're not equal right now. You're comparing that for 45 years. I didn't even stretch these out to 45 years. If these other ones were stretched out 45 years, they would be more too.
Well, if I'm reading this right, they're saying that for 45 years, option number 4 is 2.2 million, is what they would give us, round numbers.
No, 1.3 for 45 years. 1.3 would be the,
What am I missing then? Because that's what the sheet that I got says.
so
Your
one,
counteroffer was 2.235168, paid through 2020.
That's the net present value.
that's the net present value. It's, the lump sum payment is 1.3 million for 45 years.
So are you looking at the NPV coming up with that?
That's what I was looking at, 2.2. Their lump payment would be 1.3 million with a 45-year easement agreement, correct?
I mean, if you were to take out the 7121 for 45 years, like, I don't know where that is, because that's not an offer. They're not offering 7121 for 45 years.
Right, they're offering less.
So they're offering, well, at the 6,400 or the 6,865, yes, they're offering less.
Why would we want to take less? Because you get one lump sum?
You're taking some less. You're taking, okay, here's where we're at, and they want to be here. And we're saying, okay, we'll give you a little bit, but we'll give a little bit too. Yes, we are taking less, but here's why. Because you have the 45 years worth of guaranteed investment.
Well, if they're guaranteeing 45 years, then they know we're going to have cell towers for 45 years. They're not going to guarantee that much money and then turn around and say, well, in 10 years, well, we're not going to have cell towers anymore. That's the way I'm looking at it.
But the contract is not for 45 years. That contract goes through 2035.
Our contract does, right. I
And then
understand
even when they're talking a payment, it only goes through 2051. And so you get there's the longer term, which is why you get the higher amount, the 1.3 million. And there's a lot of payments in $1.3 million. And again, the other item too is for a 45-year term, if you were to stick with the payment over a 45-year term, which would probably be a contract and an amendment and an amendment and an amendment, that's a lot of years in technology. And so why not take it all now up front as a lump sum payment than just payments over that longer period of time when you don't know what the technology will be at that point? I mean, 45 years ago, they didn't even have the cell towers.
Well, in 14 years, what I'd figured out, in 14 years at what we're getting right now, $85,200 a month, we would take in 1.2 million,
So,
if my math is right.
There's 11 years, I think, left on the contract. There's 11 years left on the contract.
Yes.
yep.
That's my concern with it.
Beth, hey,
Yeah.
I've got, and I'm by no means an expert on cell tower leases, but I don't see anything maybe there's like a base contract that supports this amendment. What are their rights as far as that tower? Do they have exclusive rights to that tower? Cell phone?
There are other cell towers on there too. I'm trying to remember on Yorkshire, is there 2 on that one or 1 on that one? I can't recall. But we do have at least one tower that has 2 vendors on it, or whatever you want to call them, like Sprint and AT&T.
What are the termination clauses in that contract if they came up with a magical stick that they could mount to a light pole somewhere and they didn't need to put it on a water tower anymore and it cost them half the amount? Could they break the lease?
So, I don't have the terms of that with me, so I don't know the answer to that question. Again, we would take a look at that with the letter of intent too. I did include that other amendment, so unless is there anything in that amendment regarding the termination?
I looked it over. I didn't see.
Yeah, I don't see anything on the termination on it. Let's see real quick. English Woods. AT&T.
And it looks like, I don't know anything about this MD7, but if they're out there hunting for better deals on AT&T's behalf, they're incentivized to cut their lease payments, to go around and
They
find
are.
customers that are willing to
They are.
cut contracts short and reduce amounts and save them money.
Well, I don't know about cutting contracts short, because both of those, the 2051 is longer, and of course, the 45 years is longer, but
Well, the
definitely.
45 years, though, that would start immediately once this is signed, right? It wouldn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, yep.
But they're foregoing the higher monthly amount for the remainder of the contract.
There are. It all comes down, like I said, to that net present value. So, like I said, I didn't take a counter to them that didn't offer them a cut, because there's no sense in even doing that. I might as well just say no. But I wanted to take a look at where we could potentially benefit from their offer, or otherwise, we wouldn't do it. I'm looking to see, termination. And this one is, that shall have the right to terminate this lease at any time without further liability of the township, if they cannot obtain all certificates, permits, licenses, or other approvals from any government authority, and or easements required for the operation of the communications facility, if such approvals are canceled, expired, lapsed, withdrawn, or terminated, if the township fails to hold the legal title of the property, if the township doesn't have the authority to enter the lease, or for any other reason, NPI in its sole discretion determines that it will be unable to use the site for the intended use of this lease.
So pretty much open-ended
Yeah.
clause, they can get out
Yep.
whenever they want.
Yep.
And I know that tower that we're talking about is relatively new, right?
It was built in 92.
90s.
So what's the life
92.
cycle on a tower, and at what point do you have to do some kind of serious maintenance, and then we incur costs under this contract to remove equipment and reinstall?
Well, they
They
have
do
escrow, we have them established escrow to remove the equipment if they are gone.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, in the event that water tower needs some maintenance,
Yeah.
we have to maintain the tower, and that requires this equipment be removed and reinstalled.
So we actually have done that in recent years, and I can't recall exactly, we didn't break anything off for that. I mean, we have the leases for that, which I don't recall us forking over any of the cost to AT&T. We had to drain and inspect and paint the insides of the tank, and then the exteriors as well. I recall it's like about 100, it's either, is it 150,000 a tank to do it? But I don't recall any of that being back charged to AT&T or NPI or any of those.
But we paid for it. Sounds like it was probably baked into the bid for the contract.
Exactly.
It would work.
Yeah,
And we've had more times, we've had the cell towers needing to do work on their stuff, and they present to us a cost because they're doing work on our water tower. So they pay us for the ability, because we have to have somebody
Max Machuda that I mentioned.
observe their work
Right.
and make sure that it goes back. Our engineer makes sure that it goes.
We're able to bill AT&T
Yeah.
back for that work?
Yeah. We've done that more times than we've had to have them move their stuff so we could paint the water tower. So,
Nor with the Cherry Ridge and the Yorkshire, we haven't had to do that with the new cell tower on Hammond.
No.
Okay.
So with that, I would be looking to sign the letter of intent to give me the ability with the attorney, the engineers, and Max to look at the particulars of this to determine if it is in our best interest.
Yeah. I just know that if we take that lump sum, like right now, rates are really good and favorable to invest for a long term. And we would do much better than the 3% that we're doing now. But, I don't know how long that's gonna last. And 4 years ago, or 2.5, 3 years ago, we were much less interest rate, so if we're gonna do it sooner, the better.
But we're
Well, it is
also,
attractive.
we can take advantage of higher interest rates, but we're also taking a discount. I mean, we're not realizing the full value of the lease.
I haven't worked out the numbers, but my guess, we would make that up plus.
So the net present value, oh, I'm sorry, it's at 2.254, as I mentioned, with the 3%. If that were 5%, it jumps to 3.4 million in net present value.
So we're going to guarantee that we're going to put that 1.3 million in a piggy bank and sit it in there for 45 years?
That's what no, I don't have it.
45 years.
First of all, I don't have this analyzed over 45 years. As I was telling you, that is just the NPV through the 2051.
Okay.
Because all of the terms should be the same to compare them.
You'd be looking at putting this into class, Tracy?
Probably
Something different.
not. I would probably put it into a long-term bond of some sort. I talked to some people before I did anything,
Let
but,
your people talk to my people.
yeah.
Is there any tax implications that are different between doing the monthly versus the lump sum?
We don't pay any.
Tax.
Would it be beneficial to talk to our assessors? Would we need to, or our auditors, would we need to do any single audit or anything because of taking that kind of money in? I'm just to
No.
Because
piggyback
that's
on that.
only a
It's not federal.
Money. This is private.
That's true.
contract.
Okay,
Enterprise fund, plus it's not federal money,
right.
so.
I don't see the harm in doing a letter of intent to investigate it, so.
So that's your motion.
I would make a motion to approve the MD7 letter of intent of 11/9/28 regarding the AT&T cell tower lease located at 3650 Yorkshire.
Okay, there's a motion, is there support?
Or,
Motion is made by Bartlett, support by Walters, to approve the letter of intent dated November 9th. Is there further discussion? Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by no?
No.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote, Ann.
Bartlett,
Yes.
Walters,
yes.
Cook,
No.
Lyle,
No,
M. Cortade,
No.
S. Cortade,
Yes.
Friend.
Yes.
4-3.
Motion passes. Okay. With that, I believe we are at the end of the agenda. We are for public comment. If there's any public comment, please introduce yourself and make your perspective known. Happy to hear from you. No? Okay.
I'm just with the League of Women Voters. This is a new League of Women Voters, and I'm a new
Sure, come on up and, come on. Okay, okay.
Just here to observe.
All right, well, very nice to meet you. Okay. There's no other comments, then our next meeting is December 11th, 2023. And did you all get the email from Claire asking about the December 19th meeting? And are you sure if that would work or not work?
And she said there was gonna be stuff to eat, pizzas and all that.
She said she was
Oh,
gonna.
was it just cookies?
It was just the cookies.
She said she was gonna have, spiked eggnog for you.
Well, I misread it, I guess.
We can't
And
rent
I
PJ's
did just get an email before I came into this that the presidential primary candidate list is now out. There are 3 persons on the Michigan Democratic Party for ballot for Democratic Party. There we go. There are 3 persons that have filed to be on that ballot under the Democratic Party, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 from the Republican Party. So it will be February 27. But I could add that hot off the presses.
Well, good, that's great, because I know they were kind of up in the air about the date, right?
Yeah, the legislature did determine that they would close the 2023 session in time for the 90-day sign and die to take effect for a February 27 election.
Okay. Did anybody know that they could not make it on December 19th?
I'm going to have to look at my calendar. I
I'm
don't know.
questionable, about a 50/50.
Okay. Glenn, Matt?
It's a month away, I don't know, to be honest.
I'm available.
Okay,
There's nothing on my calendar that day.
okay.
Push it.
How about that? There is now. There is now.
That is impressive.
Okay, so, and you're good, Trace?
Yeah, I have another meeting that night that I'll have to change,
Okay.
as I do most any
Okay.
time.
All right. Well, then you'll let us know your schedules when you can check them?
Yeah, I'll have to check my schedule.
Okay. All right, I'll let Claire know, and you can always email her as well. All right, with that, unless there's any objections, then we stand adjourned. Everybody have a good evening, drive safe.
I'm gonna throw it in. No, I could just.
We ought to